Welcome aboard Imagination Skyway, your grand podcast tour of the magic. I'm your host, Matthew Kroll, and in today's episode, we continue our Mouse and the Music podcast series with an in-depth discussion of the music of the Magic Kingdom. With 6 themed lands, Magic Kingdom transports guests to the world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy, delighting guests of all ages with some of the most classic attractions at Walt Disney World. With so much music to enjoy at the park, our 2-part discussion will include an analysis of background area music loops, cue music loops, on-ride soundtracks, and iconic songs that span generations of composers and Disney fans. At the end of the show, we'll return to Imagination Central, where I'll share ways in which you can stay connected with Imagination Skyway, how you can discuss this topic with others, and how you can help support and inspire the future of this show. Please remain seated, keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times, and enjoy your Grand Circle tour aboard Imagination Skyway. We're continuing our Mouse and the Music series. We took a detour to films, but we first talked about parks, and we haven't covered parks in a while, have we, Mike? I feel like it's been a couple of years.
Has it been? I remember it being at least a year, maybe longer. I don't know.
I think it's been maybe 2 years since we broached a theme park, and this one is the most magical of all. I think that's probably a bit too on the nose,
but appropriate nevertheless.
Yeah, if there's any place that you can use that adjective, I think it is Magic Kingdom. And this is a park that obviously has an extensive history. Last park we talked about was Disney's Hollywood Studios, and that goes back to 1989. And while we're not going to jump back to the music of 1971, this is a park that has seen music loop changes, attraction changes, soundtrack changes to attractions, shortened versions of attraction scores. There's a lot of history at Magic Kingdom in general, and that extends to the music. And we have so much to discuss, but like every other topic that we've discussed when it comes to music, I like to ask some rapid fire questions, and these relate specifically to Magic Kingdom. My first question is, what is your favorite attraction at Magic Kingdom?
Attraction in general? Ew, that's interesting.
How about I say ride? Because I feel like you maybe have a ride queued up faster than a general attraction.
That's interesting. I will say, from Magic Kingdom specifically, Space Mountain's definitely up there. I'll put it that way. Space Mountain is definitely going to be up there. I have not got a chance to ride Tiana's, but Splash Mountain was also one of my favorites too. So I'm very, very excited to try Tiana's. But I would say for now, specifically Magic Kingdom, I'll probably say Space Mountain.
That's a great answer. I will page Mr. Morrow for my answer. The Tomorrowland Transit Authority, I think, is probably my favorite at the park, if not Pirates of the Caribbean. Those are two I tend to gravitate towards. And Haunted Mansion, there's so many choices to pick from, but I'll say the Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover is probably my favorite at the park these days. And Maggie loves it, so it's just fun for the whole family. Very relaxing way to enjoy the day.
That's actually one of the things I really like about Magic Kingdom specifically, is I feel like it has such a good variety of attractions that is, for that one, it's very challenging to find a favorite. Where if you told me any other park, I would have usually a definitive answer. Magic Kingdom, though, because, for example, Space Mountain is such a fun ride, but it's a rough ride, right? So that's something, it's an older attraction now. So for that reason, sometimes I want to have the TTA because that's much more of a calmer attraction. Haunted Mansion is very different in comparison to even Pirates of the Caribbean. I think Magic Kingdom, to me, probably has the most variety of attractions, I personally feel, than any other Disney park.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. We'll have to maybe touch on that subject in the future. I'll have to do some analysis and some thinking to figure out the variety. And that's at least the sense I get for sure is that Magic Kingdom has the most number of attractions,
That's it.
and that also makes it easier to have a wider variety of attractions. But that is still a great analysis of that park, and it is very interesting. Your favorite next question: what is your favorite land at Magic Kingdom?
Tomorrowland.
Yeah, well, we're
Yeah,
sticking really,
hands down.
really.
Yeah, I mean,
We're
you're talking
focused
about
on
favorite
Tomorrowland.
attraction. You're going to be talking about all these things. They're Tomorrowland, no question, hands down. That is definitely by far my favorite land.
Yeah, it's a really hard question for me. I'm actually gonna default to Fantasyland, and it's got, I think, it has a lot of attractions, and especially with Maggie and Emily in the picture, we tend to spend a lot of time in Fantasyland, and I could do most of those attractions again and again. Yes, including It's a Small World. I maybe have a limit in a day, but I will get talk about the music and the other aspects of that attraction. But I'll say Fantasyland. Number three, name a land. I feel like it might be the same answer. What name? Is there a land that you think is better after dark compared to during the day?
Really?
I know. I had these
Really?
questions lined up, and I'm like, I didn't know you were going to say Tomorrowland. All right, it's Tomorrowland. That's the answer.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Main Street USA is.
That's a good
is
one
that I
too.
like at night. Yeah.
That's a good one too. And I also do want to mention that I really do enjoy all the different lands and Fantasyland as well. But also too, there's the park going mind of me going mentioning like going reminding me that how crowded Fantasyland is just in general during the day. And that also I don't like to be around large crowds for a long period of time, ideally. So for me, even as a kid, I remember that Fantasyland, although I love It's a Small World, love Peter Pan's Flight, it definitely was, I felt, a section that we tried to spend the least time in just because there's just so many people that are in a very small confined area. Now, fortunately, with the expansion, that's helped it out immensely, but still, you have a lot of those main attractions very close to each other, so it gets quite crowded often.
Yeah. That's fair. All right, so we've learned today that Mike only loves Tomorrowland, and every other part of the park is just an afterthought.
It's just an afterthought. Yeah, that's pretty much right.
We'll stick with those three rapid fire questions. I have a bunch more I could ask, but I want to jump into the music of Magic Kingdom and start by asking you, when you think about the music at this park compared to the other theme parks at Walt Disney World, what strikes out to you as some of the differences or perhaps some of the similarities for Magic Kingdom?
So as far as the differences are concerned, because specifically of the fact of how many lands there are and how unique each of the lands what they each represent in comparison to number, because you think about the other parks, for example, you think of Hollywood studios. Sure, you have different sections based upon films and then also the love of film and television, right, as kind of an overarching theme. Even Epcot, for example, they're really, even though there's various different sections, they're more nuanced, I would say, except for, of course, World Showcase being completely different, right? And then you have also Animal Kingdom, which also has different regions that it's representing and has then music from those regions in it. It still also has generally the same type of feel to it, where Magic Kingdom, on the other hand, you're going from the past, or you talk about adventure and frontier, right? Liberty Square, even Main Street, right? These very legacy, if you will, themes. And then you have Tomorrowland, which is now the future. So I think there's just such a stark difference between the music in all these different places that all feel very, very unique. So I think that's a big difference in comparison to Magic Kingdom. As far as the similarities are concerned, you see that you have very similar composers being writing this music from park to park to park. But in addition to that as well, Disney does such a great job of having this familiarity with their music as a whole, and no matter what park you go to, you feel like you're in a Disney park, and that's something that I love about going to Disney, is that particular reason. In addition to that too, as the years have progressed, Disney has incorporated more of their music over the years into the parks themselves, and that I've also noticed across the board amongst many of the parks, is that you're hearing a lot more of their more iconic music from their films for decades. So I think that have been a noticeable similarity over the past several years.
That's a great analysis. I'll add on top of that, I don't want to repeat the things that you said. When we look at and talk about some of the other parks, the other three parks have a higher percentage, not that it's non-existent at Magic Kingdom, but a higher percentage of needle drop. Where, if you're not familiar with the term, you haven't listened to the show in our segment before, needle drop is essentially pulling existing music from other sources and inputting it into the park. So a great example is very clearly World Showcase is going to be pulling from actual folk tunes from those various countries and placing them in that World Showcase soundtrack. Over at Hollywood Studios, you're going to hear a lot of film scores that are incorporated into the lands at the park. Magic Kingdom has some of that, but it has a lot more original music that spans generations of composers. And you think back to, we're going to talk about Main Street shortly, that has a lot of needle drop hits from the turn of the century, some recomposed versions, rearranged versions of different musical scores. But then you also think about the attractions that had scores written by the original Imagineers or by the Sherman Brothers. And then you have newer attractions or updated attractions that now feature scores written by more modern composers, whether they're at Disney or beyond. And then one of the newest attractions over at Magic Kingdom, TRON Lightcycle Run, we'll also talk about is pulling from an entirely different generation of film goers and Disney Parks fans or Disney Parks goers. So there's a really broad range of years and generations that span the music at the park, and in a lot of original music that was written specifically for Magic Kingdom, and I think a higher percentage of that pie than the needle drop music that you'll hear at the park. So that to me is a pretty interesting contrast compared to some of all the other three parks over at Walt Disney World. So we have, as you mentioned, there's several lands, and we are going to go through each of them. There are 6 themed lands at the Magic Kingdom right now, and we got our work ahead of us for sure. Our work cut out for us for sure. And I think what we'll do is we'll go land by land to keep this organized. But rather than go in a very specific order, we both are looking from the same menu of music just to keep us on target and on the same page. But we can go from within any given land from one score, music loop, or song to another based upon just what you want to cover first. So let's go with the first land you enter at Magic Kingdom, which after you pass through those turnstiles is Main Street USA. And you might not think too much about the music of Main Street USA, but there is a lot of it and a lot more than you probably realize on the surface. So Mike, when you think about Main Street USA, what's that first music loop or song or soundtrack that you want to discuss?
So, I mean, I'll talk about the entrance music loops. Just right off the bat, as soon as you walk in, right? And this is representing, of course, turn of the century, late 19th, early 20th century instrumental renditions of a lot of classic tunes. And so for me, that already gets me in the mindset that I'm in Magic Kingdom and ready for a fun-filled day. And again, I love the fact also that you're starting off in the turn of the century, and then from there, your imagination's going to go. And I always appreciate that fact that it always started with the roots, right? The roots of Walt Disney, the roots of, it starts it also starts grounded too. I'll put it that way too. It also starts very grounded as far as the music is concerned, the atmosphere, everything like that before you go into these amazing worlds in the park. Having said that, I did take note of a number of songs that are needle drops, if you will, but they are instrumental renditions of these essentially needle drops throughout. I don't have all of them, but these are just the ones that I personally caught along the way. So you have
this is it's not a lecture, so kids at home, you don't need to take notes.
No, I do my homework.
There's going to be a pop quiz. There's going to be a pop quiz at the end.
Yes. How many songs are there in the entrance loop? Actually, I could probably figure that out too.
And list them in order if you can for full
and list them in order. Wow, I'm sure that exists somewhere. So if a cast member is listening and you happen to have that, let us know. That would be fantastic. Anyway, so I have here when you wish upon a star, the Mickey Mouse March theme, the Tiki Room, Under the Sea, Dig 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 as well as Hi Ho from Snow White. You Can Fly from, of course, Peter Pan. Side by Side, which remember correctly, now correct me if I'm wrong, that's not originally from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, right? Is that a song or is that original song from Who Framed Roger Rabbit? I
That's
don't
a deep
remember.
cut I did not prepare an answer for.
Okay, well, Side by Side, nevertheless, is in it, and that is in the film Who Framed Roger Rabbit at the end. And so that's in there. The David Crockett theme song, Zippity Doodah. And then we also have a swing version of Grinning Ghosts, which is actually one of my favorites because I love that rendition of it. And of course, It's a Small World. So those are the ones I picked. I definitely did not catch all of them, but those are at least the classic tunes from Disney that I was able to catch.
Yeah, the front of the park does feature so many hits from the park and from the films, and it's interesting how that has also changed over the years. They've incorporated some newer film songs into it. I think "You've Got a Friend in Me" is maybe one that also is played in that music loop as you're walking in, but it sets you in that Disney state of mind as you're walking into the park. It is probably the most quote unquote like Disney park of the four parks at Walt Disney World. And so hearing those familiar songs in an instrumental version, even if you're not consciously aware of it, sets you up for some of the experiences ahead, even though not everything that you mentioned is related to a specific attraction in the park. But it is a great way to get you in that state of mind. And I'm just going to take us through that journey to the next step, because then you walk underneath the train station and you set foot on Main Street USA. And now you are brought back to a more ragtime era with turn of the century Main Street USA. We've discussed and have had several episodes devoted just to the subject of the history of Main Street USA, which we will not cover here for the sake of time. But we are looking at, of course, the turn of the century. And you'll hear also a little bit to your point about the entrance music. We'll hear a little bit more needle drop with Main Street USA. So you'll hear songs from Hello Dolly and Happiest Millionaire. A lot of those, whether they're Disney films or otherwise, that recapture that, even though if it's not directly from, again, the turn of the century, some of that ragtime and swing style music that will bring you back to an earlier bygone era. And one of the things that is interesting about Main Street USA is even that loop, while a lot of people think it hasn't changed, it has changed. In fact, I believe it was 2012 that they updated both the Disneyland and Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom Main Street USA music loops to include more music. And one of the things that they included, which is a small little thing, and you might notice it as you're walking through if you hit it just the right time, it's about an hour-long music loop. But if you're walking down Main Street, you might hear the theme from Up, Married Life, which we talked about in an earlier episode, which if you think about the timing of when that film takes place, again, maybe not exactly turn of the century, but that Michael Giacchino song definitely has a strong fit with Main Street USA. So it really does transport you to this earlier era. And I love that it has this whimsical, upbeat, relaxing overall vibe to it, so that when you're walking into the park, you're relaxing, thinking about the day ahead. And as you're walking out of the park, it's a very gentle, ends of your day melody to help get you out of the park. And it speaks to the happy feelings they want you to have when you're visiting Magic Kingdom, which is probably the, again, quote unquote, like happiest or most magical park at Walt Disney World. So
I'll say this. So quick joke.
yeah,
It's almost like you're at the, when you're done with the dinner party, right? And your host wants you kind of to leave, but wants to do it in a very nice way. It's like, here you go. Like, here's the,
the lights are dimmed.
lights are dimmed. It's like, okay, drive safely home. No,
Exactly.
seriously, that it's such brilliance on putting you into that right mindset and how much music does affect you in that way when you're going to that park and you're having that feeling. And even if you're amongst crowds of people, you still have that sense of feeling of relaxation and excitement and enjoyment. And then same thing is true at the end of the day when you are just exhausted from having a fun-filled day at the park. You still feel this sense of joy, if you will, or yeah, I say joy would be the good word here. So a sense of joy when you are now leaving the park. So
Yes, absolutely. Well, there's still more on Main Street USA, which is amazing because I think a lot of people think, all right, we have the entrance music and then we have the Main Street USA music loop, but there's more to Main Street. So, Mike, where do you want to take us next?
Outside of Main Street?
Within Main Street.
Or within Main Street. So I want to mention specifically a Main Street about it's not even just about the loops themselves, but there's also live music that happens on Main Street too.
Exactly.
And something that I very much appreciated. So everything from barbershop quartets, marching bands, like there's all kinds of different live music that happens all throughout Main Street of USA. Of course, also the parade that comes through too. But that's something that I do want to point out and appreciate is the fact that still today they still have musicians coming into the park and performing on Main Street USA and giving you that again that turn of the century feeling and transporting you back in time. And there's something to be said about live music and that interaction with live music.
Yes, the fact that you can experience some of that turn of the century magic with the Dapper Dan's live performances, so that barbershop quartet style music as you're walking down Main Street, whether they're riding the trolley passing by or they're planted in one of the spots along Main Street and you hear that gorgeous a cappella style music as you're passing by. It does between their costumes and then their incredible performances. Very talented group. They really set that vibe for Main Street turn of the century, and I think it's a very important aspect to the lands to make it more authentic and to make it more immersive. And the same is true with the live pianists that you can hear over at Casey's Corner. They are also supremely talented pianists, and it adds to that corner soda fountain feeling to be on that corner of Main Street USA, close to the hub, and to hear that piano music is really a strong connection to the ragtime and turn of the century era music you hear with the land, and the of course architecture and the overall story and the theme of it to really place you there.
And can you request?
Yeah.
You can request songs too, right? To the pianist, you can request songs.
From what I understand, you can. I think there's probably perhaps a limit to what they know, but there are definitely I have heard them take requests, and I think that they obviously know a wide range of songs that they can play. And if they know it, then they'll play it. But of course, like anything else, it's just a limit to what songs they know and what they can play in the park. But yeah, from what I understand, I have seen them take some requests in the past. Now, the one other live performance, we'll say, over at Main Street USA, which is technically not limited to Main Street USA, but I think it is a worthy spot in our discussion to discuss it. The Festival of Fantasy Parade, that daytime parade, shortly after we publish this, there's also going to be the return of a nighttime spectacular, which really to me falls in the bracket of extinct attractions at this point. While we could talk about Spectrum Magic and the Main Street Electrical Parade and the music that they brought to the Magic Kingdom, Festival of Fantasy is the only parade currently at Magic Kingdom and is that daytime parade. And this obviously has music that was written specifically for the parade that has been around for over a decade now, which is insane that it's been a part of the park for that long. But here you're going to, like any other daytime parade, have one general theme song, which in this case is called Festival of Fantasy. It's a song that will get stuck in your head. It's very upbeat, optimistic. It has that almost royal sounds to it, with the blaring trumpets, and it feels very connected to Cinderella Castle in that music style to it. But then you're also going to hear some themes from the character floats featured. So you're going to hear, a bit of Tale as Old as Time as you're passing by. You're going to hear I've Got a Dream as the Rapunzel float passes by. You're going to hear some Under the Sea as Ariel passes by. I love that when the core villains portion of it, which is devoted to Maleficent, passes by, you get a bit of a throwback with the original Sleeping Beauty score tied into the Festival of Fantasy soundtrack, where Prince Philip is battling against Dragon Maleficent. They tied in that music into the Festival of Fantasy theme, made it a little more upbeat, still has that drama to it, and they made it perhaps even a little bit more dramatic for that sequence. And then, of course, tying things out with, or rounding things out with the close of the parade and that final Festival of Fantasy fanfare as the parade rolls through. So for me, there's nothing is I've watched it everywhere. I've watched the parade in Frontierland, in Liberty Square, and Main Street USA. I tend to avoid Main Street USA because of the crowds, but I think it is perhaps still the best spot to watch it from to get that true Magic Kingdom feeling. So Festival of Fantasy, we have to include that because that is a pretty major theme of Magic Kingdom.
Absolutely. So we're going next.
Well, we've got a few. We can touch on, I think, very briefly. There are two full service restaurants that have their own scores, believe it or not, their own soundtracks, and I think I love that about Disney, that even the table service restaurants and the quick service restaurants have their own soundtracks. It's sometimes the restaurants that I have some of my favorites from, and the two that are here, not perhaps on my favorites list, but still fit within their own theme and within the broader Main Street USA theme, are Tony's Town Square and Crystal Palace. So Tony's Town Square is going to have a little bit more of that classic, we'll call it cliche, Italian folk music incorporated into that restaurant. It is meant to be an upscale, Italian spot on Main Street. And then Crystal Palace has more of a tea room type of classical score to it that would fit with that stylized, Victorian era tea room that you might experience over in turn of the century America. So they each have sort of their own scores, their own soundtracks that fit within the broader Main Street vibe, as well as the specific themes and specific stories that they tell. But we got to start with we're only still on Main Street, but one that's still very important for the park, and I think a lot of Disney fans hope stick around for a while, is the nighttime spectacular Happily Ever After. And
Absolutely.
this one is sung by Jordan Fisher and Angie Kielhauer, and it has been a part of the Magic Kingdom again for like a decade now. So it's I think it's almost a decade that Happily Ever After has been. It's 2017 that Happily Ever After came into existence. So it's been about 8 years. There was a period where there was Disney Enchantment, not Happily Ever After. Prior to that was Wishes. There's a whole history of nighttime spectaculars at Magic Kingdom. But this one, again, much like Magic Kingdom's other fireworks spectaculars, you're going to have the themes from some film scores. I love that this one even includes not just the ones you might expect, like, Hercules is in there, Frozen is in there, but you also have even Pirates of the Caribbean as a part of that sequence. It's one of my favorite parts of the show, and you'll really experience a lot of the common themes, whether it's love or heroism or fear or courage that goes along with fear, or victory. Like there's a lot of those common Disney story arcs that are incorporated into the score itself. But then that Happily Ever After theme, the lyrics that are a part of it, the inspiration of the music itself makes for a perfect, we'll call it a theme song for Magic Kingdom, because a lot of people will attach that fireworks to the end of their day, that fireworks show to the end of their day, and that's the last song they hear when they walk out of the park underneath the train station. Anything else you wanted to highlight about Happily Ever After?
Absolutely.
Or anything else about Main Street?
So the fireworks, the Happily Ever After fireworks is one of my favorites of all time from Magic Kingdom, or honestly in general too. It's just a well put together show, and I love the variety of music. In fact, one that you missed that I certainly did not miss was Out There from Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh yes, of course,
one of my favorite Disney films. So that I appreciate that they did have a couple of those essentially those deep cuts, if you will, from the less popular Disney films that were part of it. So I really did appreciate that. Also, to the composers, Adam Watts and Andy Dodd, they've written for Disney before. They've actually done quite a bit. High School Musical, Hannah Montana, The Descendants. So if you think of those, you'll hear some similarities into Happily Ever After. So I thought that was very interesting. I also thought when I first saw the show that it was Ever After from Enchanted, which
Mm.
which is I found out it's a common mistake, and it is not. They are two different songs. One's Ever After, this one's Happily Ever After. Happily Ever After was composed specifically for this fireworks show. So I thought that was pretty interesting too. But yes, I think I love everything about all the song selections they selected. As you mentioned, the themes of courage and friendship and love and conflict and triumph all encompassed into one show. I think it's truly magic. I'm going to put magical here because it is. It's truly magical what they accomplished with that particular show.
There's going to be a game at home for how many times Mike and I mentioned magical.
I wanted to.
in this episode, but
I
it's
want to
true.
counter. I want to counter at the end. Times you said magical on this show on this episode.
You can tag us in stories and let us know how many you tallied in this magical discussion. There's another one for you.
Magical, magical, magical. There's three more. Go ahead.
That feels pretty all encompassing for Main Street USA. While we could probably, I'm sure we're leaving out the stage show that happens every single day and some other aspects of Main Street. I feel like those are the ones that are the staples for Main Street in its current form. And whether you've walked down Main Street for the first time or the 100th time, it always feels the same when you're in that lands because of how it is a timeless part of Disney history, but one that still continues to evolve and grow and change with each passing year or decade. They seem to have something new, whether it's new nighttime spectaculars, new daytime parades, or a slight tweak to some of the existing audio loops that you'll hear on Main Street. Now, I have to ask, please don't make it the same answer, but it might be the same answer. When you enter Magic Kingdom, Mike, do you go right or do you go left?
Really? Honestly, I mean,
You be honest. I'm teasing you.
So
Do
here's
you
the
go to
thing.
Tomorrowland first?
no. So here's the thing. Do I have to ask the question? Do I have an attraction than a book? Because if you're talking to me in this particular way, I'm going to be thinking of it as if I was actually visiting Magic Kingdom. Which in that case scenario, it depends upon what attraction that I have queued up first. Will determine what direction I go.
When you
I-
were growing up, how about before even Fast Pass
Or those
existed?
all those
Yeah.
things. Okay, Tomorrowland's going to be the answer because that is my favorite section. But I will say this: is that normally, though, I believe that guests normally go essentially almost count like they go don't they start in Tomorrowland and then go around usually, or is it the vice versa?
Yes, so you're right that with the advent of and for the additions of Fast Pass, Fast Pass Plus, Lightning Lane, we call it what you want. Essentially, the skip the line system at Walt Disney World that has thrown a different dimension into the park's guest flow, and now it is a little more spread. But the traditional, we'll call it 1971, or even if you want to include when Space Mountain was around 1975, flow for most guests was they went right first. And that's because most people on the planet are right-handed, and therefore they tend to think to their right when they do anything, which is why as you're walking up Main Street USA towards the castle, the right-hand side is going to have the bakery, and the left side as you're walking out is going to have the Emporium, because that's, on your way out, you want to grab some, or they want you to grab some souvenirs on your way out. But that also extends to the lands. Most people start with their right. Although if you're thinking like a clock, we'll think clockwise. But yes, the Tomorrowland Bridge is the widest because Disney knew that most guests would cross that bridge first.
So that's interesting. Did not realize about the bakery and the Emporium being intentional that way, and that's also so awesome. But
They know what they're doing.
they know what they're doing. But also, in addition to that, I would say even as a kid, I would normally our family would go left for that reason, because we know everyone's going to generally go right first. So we would go left and then go on the attractions and go essentially clockwise around the different parks. Also, too, I will say that I do tend to enjoy going to Adventureland first. I don't know why. I think for me that is the representation for me as the beginning of the day, and Tomorrowland, especially because of all the lights that are on in Tomorrowland, is usually something that I like to go to in the evening time. So for those reasons, I generally, even though Tomorrowland's my favorite, I guess you can say for me it's the save the best for last.
Yeah, it's the dessert at the end of your day. My
It
family
is very much.
operated the same way, and I think our parents probably spoke to one another about park strategies in the
I'm
80s
sure.
and 90s because we follow the exact same philosophy. Well, let's cross that Adventureland bridge with some percussion music as we head into the jungles of Africa and Asia with the Adventureland. There's a lot also to discuss here, and that includes not just, I feel like Main Street, we have some new themes, we have a lot more background music, and not necessarily, while you might hear a song or two, nothing that stands out as perhaps as iconic as some of the music you might hear in Adventureland. And similar to Main Street, I am going to let you go first, and you can go anywhere you want first. But where would you like to take us in Adventureland first to discuss the music?
I mean, we'll start with the first part, which is the bridge. So we can just
Yes.
start there. And the music there. I mean, it's very simple. It's very percussion heavy. Music styles that kind of get you in the mood of being in this jungle area. So I feel like that also gets me in that mood of the beginning of the day. Is just this nice little marimba and all these different kinds of percussionist type sounds that are just just kind of get you in adventurous mode. I guess is the best I could explain it.
That's a great way to put it. They definitely want you. They want you in an adventurous mood. I do think that those the percussion sounds do give people the impression of wandering beyond the space and time of our like modern cities and going somewhere deep into the jungle somewhere, um, and the adventure that awaits behind that. And it's still, they could have made it a very dramatic and almost frightening medley of percussion, but it is still the percussion choices that they have there are a little more high pitched and they're a little more upbeat and very. They still speak to that happiness of walking through a Magic Kingdom. So it's definitely still maintaining that optimistic spirit of Magic Kingdom as you're walking in, but still giving you this sense of adventure. Um, I'm gonna take us to the so many different ways to go. I'm going to take us to one that is a little tangential with Main Street USA, which I'll discuss two at once for the sake of time. They are very similar, and that is the Jungle Cruise Q Loop mixed with the Skipper Canteen music loop. Skipper Canteen, of course, was not a park original like Jungle Cruise. It was added decades later. Not that in the grand scheme of Magic Kingdom, it's still a relatively new restaurant. But both of them follow the same time period of we're looking at 20s, 30s, 40s, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s music, and it ranges from the from swing to jazz to ballads that you might hear in that era. And the thing that I love is, especially with the Jungle Cruise loop, they sprinkle in this. It's an Albert. The narrator is Albert Awol, which definitely is giving you a hint of the zany type of experience ahead, or the humorous journey that's ahead of you. And he has so many corny jokes within the queue, which make me laugh every single time. And it gets you in the spirit of Jungle Cruise before you set foot on the boat at the dock. It's guests, don't worry. There are, I'm paraphrasing, but there are banks all along our rivers. If you're short on cash, don't worry. There's banks all along our rivers. One of my favorites for some reason is asking one of the scientists to please return the dinosaur coloring book and crayons that he borrowed from the skipper office. Um,
I remember that one actually.
yeah. Um, they have just such these corny jokes that are in there. So not even speaking to the music, but the narration that's included in the Jungle Cruise queue. But again, you're listening to the quote unquote sounds of the jungle, and it's really not just the sounds of the jungle, but the sounds of that era that are letting people know still what time period they're in. And it might be the music that you would hear on the dock waiting to board an actual cruise in the jungle. Um, so it's speaking to a couple of things at once, and then that theme is continued over at Skipper Canteen, which has a different medley of songs, but still following that same style. And here it's going to be even a little bit more subdued because it is meant to be. The skippers are trying to give you somewhat of uh, more serious, enjoyable experience over at the canteen, but they're still having trouble sticking to the script as they are as they're using this as another source of income for the skipper navigation company. Anyway, so I thought I would. It's not the most popular set of songs at Adventureland, but I thought I would start there because it does feel a bit like an extension of Main Street USA, maybe bringing us 20, 30 years forward in time. Where would you like to go next, Mike? You're up next.
Well, I think you're probably going to know where I would like to go next. So I'll let you.
There's
well,
two big ones. Are you going to be sailing in the same way with a different group of crew members, or are you going to take us to more of a tropical hideaway?
More of a tropical hideaway because
Okay,
you know me, I like it when it's showtime.
I do.
Which, if you didn't get the hints, we're of course talking about the Enchanted Tiki Room, which still to this day is one of my favorite attractions and one of the original attractions. And love love the theme song. In fact, it is one of the first songs ever to be specifically designed for a theme park attraction. And in fact, that is, as far as I'm concerned, the genesis of the idea of having music for a theme park designed specifically for a theme park attraction. And of course, that was all the Sherman Brothers, because Walt Disney himself famously took them to the Enchanted Tiki Room, and the Sherman Brothers were the ones who suggested there should be a theme song for this. And wasn't it that Walt Disney's like, can you whip something up in like a day or two or something? Like it was like some sort of ridiculous truncated time frame. And they're like, sure. They whipped up literally a Enchanted Tiki Room, and you know, at the Tiki Room, and the rest is history. So I really appreciated that about this particular attraction. I mean, it was of course originally visioned as a restaurant, but then I think also was it the Sherman Brothers or somebody was mentioning that people may not like the idea of being over at birds, even if they are animatronic, and so they transferred the whole idea into an attraction that exists today. So, but outside of that, of course, during it's very Polynesian inspired, of course, also while you're on the queue and going in. So again, getting you into that Polynesian kind of feel and spirit. And that's always, I feel even in the quote unquote tropics of Florida, you still now feel like you're in the tropics of the Hawaiian areas. So I've always appreciated that. I also make a note too, in addition to those things, is that I also appreciated when Iago made his appearance for a while there.
Under new management.
Under new management. Now, I know some people were not particularly fond of this because it did change the original, but I thought it was a fresh take on it, especially when I was a kid. I really liked that version of it. And if I remember correctly, they had a rendition of "You Got a Friend in Me," Friend Like Me, excuse me, God from Me is Toy Story, Friend Like Me from Aladdin. But I really appreciated that they changed the whole story where Iago's kind of taking over and the other birds were not particularly too happy about that. So I really liked that at the time. It gave a little bit of a fresher take on the concept of it, but also, something to be said about the original as well.
I'll say that the best thing to come out of the under new management era was the Oa animatronic, which got moved over to, not in animatronic form, but got moved over to Trader Sam's Grog Grotto at the Polynesian Resort. Otherwise, I'm very happy that it's back to what it was. But obviously, they did try something new, and this was it didn't last very long. It lasted maybe a few years, but Yeah, I like that they did bring back and they renamed it to Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, because
Mhm.
originally it was Tropical Serenade was the original name of the Magic Kingdom attraction. But yes, that it does feature the main theme song was written by the Sherman Brothers. We also have to give a lot of credit to the Mellow Men, and in
Yes.
particular to Wally Bogue and my gosh, Fulton Burley. Couldn't remember his name, because the two of them had a strong hand in directing the vision for the birds themselves and the four main birds of the Enchanted Tiki Room, and what that style of conversation was going to be like. They also, and aside from the theme song, they also have like "Let's All Sing Like the Birdies Sing." There is a
Mhm.
luau style song that's incorporated into into the experience. And then at the end, which just speaks to the period of time when this was written, you walk out with "Hi Ho"
Oh, yep.
from Snow White as you're walking out. So thinking about pulling from the animated movies at Disney, that at the time made the most sense to have for it's not hi ho itself, but it's hi ho, it's out the door you
There
go.
you go.
Um, we hope you all enjoyed the show. Hi ho. I'm not going to sing it for you. You don't. I'm going to spare you. But yeah. So and then also in there is Thurl Ravenscroft is one of the birds too. So you have him singing, and he makes his way in other parts of Magic Kingdom, and
Hmm.
yeah. So it's a mix of history for sure. One that I obviously devoted an entire podcast episode you can go back and listen to, talk a little bit more about the story behind the song and how this show was developed. You're right that the Imagineers called Walt out on it not maybe being the best idea for a restaurant to have live birds, but it does make sense as an animatronic show during the day for guests to enjoy. So that's a great pick, Mike. I am then going to quickly mention as a sort of an honorable mention, because again there's so much in this park, but also the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse has a theme called Swiss Capoca, and I believe that was actually written by Buddy Baker, who wrote a lot of themes in Magic Kingdom. But it's a quick little song as you're passing through. You hear it on the organ as you're passing by that part of the attraction. It's probably, I think, Maggie's favorite attraction at Magic Kingdom, believe it or not, is the
Wow.
Swiss Family Treehouse. We do it a lot, during the summer months, try to limit it to the morning and late in the day, but certainly during the cooler months, she'll ask to do it like 2, 3 times in a row. She loves climbing the stairs and going down the stairs, and she's very good at it. So she's getting better and better. But yeah, I had to give a little shout out to Swiss Family Robinson. But we should talk about Pirates of the Caribbean. I think it's probably the last major
Should,
part of Adventureland to
should
discuss.
we?
But go
I
ahead,
don't
Mike.
know.
I debated passing it up as maybe one of the smaller attractions at the park, but obviously this carries over a lot from the Disneyland attraction because that was created first. The start of your musical journey, a lot of people will miss, is not the classic overture that I could probably listen to on repeat for hours, and I think I may have in the past, written by Buddy Baker. Sorry, not Buddy Baker, George Bruns, who, by the way, I did this in a reel. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I posted this in a reel as a small little fact, and I love that not a lot of people realized it, but then heard it back when I shared it and they could hear it. George Bruns, who wrote a few or several scores across the Disney parks, especially at Magic Kingdom. He also wrote the score to Jungle Book, which a lot of people credit to the Sherman Brothers because the Sherman Brothers wrote the songs, but the score, the background music for Jungle Book, was written by George Bruns. And when you walk through the Pirates of the Caribbean queue and listen to the overture, think about Jungle Book and you'll hear a lot of the similarities, the same instruments being used, especially the heavy flute usage.
Hmm.
And its lower range definitely carries over from Jungle Book, and it was written about the same time, just a few years after. Or actually, no, it was about the same time as because I'm thinking there's Disneyland too. It's about the same time as the Jungle Book was written, so a very similar overlap between those two scores. But yeah, I was saying that as you're walking into Pirates of the Caribbean, you actually have Caribbean Plaza, and that has its own um, music that is hard to describe. It's a bit what's the word I'm looking for. Uh, it's oh my gosh, there's actually a word that's escaping my head, but it has the sea chanty. That's the word I was looking for. It's like it's not
Yes.
maybe not an official word, but like it has very sea chanty sound to it. So you're hearing, fiddles and cellos and a lot of the sounds you might incorporate or associate with pirate era music, colonial era music, and so you'll hear that getting you in the spirit of the Caribbean theme, that pirate theme, even before you walk and hear the overture music. But then, of
I,
course, yeah, go ahead. Go
sorry,
ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I wanted to interject real quick. But that also had a
Please do.
massive. That was a massive change, though. That was not too long ago because that wasn't the original soundtrack to that area.
I think it was the original brought back because they
Was
did
it?
have, because you're thinking probably when they had the music from the soundtrack from Pirates of the Caribbean, the
Well,
movies.
well, no, I'm talking about before that, where it was very like ominous, and you have the flute, like very similar to the cue itself, but it was
Oh, that's
very
possible.
yeah. So it was because if I remember correctly, that was the original. Was that where it was that those, like you said, those low flute sounds? It was a lot more quiet, a lot more subtle. Where now it's more upbeat with, as you mentioned, like more sea shanty style, where it's definitely more of that kind of pirates feel. So almost like a combination of that subtlety of the original, but a little bit more of rambunctious of the Pirates of the Caribbean films. It's kind of like a combination of the two, which I think is more appropriate.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes nostalgia is going to get to you, and I still kind of miss that ominous sound when you go into the Pirates, the Caribbean Plaza right before you're going on the attraction.
Now I need to go back and try to see if I can find that original music. I thought you were also, because I knew you knew it wasn't the original, but
Yeah.
I thought you were also referring back to there was a period of time where when they changed in 2006 the attraction to the enhanced version, which included the addition of Jack Sparrow and
Right.
Captain Barbossa, they incorporated into the area music. They created like an hour long area music loop that featured the music from the Pirates of the Caribbean film.
Hmm.
That was played out there for a while too. But that's again, I'll have to go back and listen to it. But we were leading into the actual attraction. Obviously, a lot of people very similar. I think there's a very common misconception about Pirates of the Caribbean's music that is similar to It's a Small World, where people for some reason remember or think, if they've never been on it before, that you go on the ride and you hear the call it the CD version, right, or the Spotify version or Apple Music version of the the soundtrack version of the song on repeat as you're going through the attractions, which would be in the case of Pirates of the Caribbean 3 to 5 minutes, depending on which version you're listening to, which is really like a minute and a half song on repeat. And on It's a Small World, similar thing. It's kind of like a minute and a half on repeat. But that's not true for either one of those attractions. I don't think you hear the pirates sing until the burning town sequence at the end of the attraction. And
Yeah.
everything else leading up to it is a variation, an instrumental rendition of Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me in the background.
Hmm.
Even as you're going through the cave in the beginning of the ride, you still hear Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me, but it's played at a very slow pace, very slow tempo, and it's played by on an ominous flute that plays into that thunderstorm that's happening in the background, the dark, ominous, the dead skeleton pirates, the buried treasure, the sword in the chest. Like it feels very ominous. And then you go into the town when they're alive, and it's a little more upbeat, but still instrumental. And then it builds into the final Yo Ho Pirate's Life for Me song, which you really only hear sung for maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes of ride time before you exit and head back to Caribbean Plaza. Um,
One of the things I do want to mention too is that, of course, one of the changes they also made in
Yeah.
2006 was they did incorporate the themes from Pirates of the Caribbean, the notable themes from Pirates of the Caribbean, the film, into the attraction as well, which I felt that actually makes sense. Again, somebody who is very much appreciative of nostalgia, I thought though that was actually a very welcome addition to the soundtrack of the ride.
Yeah, I forgot the name of the song. You're right. I forgot the name of the song from the soundtrack from the movie, but it's the same theme that's played when you see Jack Sparrow for the first time as he's
Yes.
walking onto the dock as the ship is sinking. That's
It's so
played in the
good.
the battle scene
Yes.
between the forts and the ship that's now uh, captained by Captain Barbosa in the attraction. That's a very interesting one.
The lyrics
Another,
too. Also, sorry,
yeah, yeah. No,
about
no,
the
you jump
lyrics.
in.
Oh, sorry. So also to the lyrics of, because we were talking about, of course, getting into Yoho Pirates Life for Me, which I again definitely could have that song on repeat. Never get bored of it. And you were talking about George Bruns before, and also I mentioned that Exitensio did the lyrics for Yoho Pirates Life for Me, which, if that name sounds familiar, we've talked about him before many times on this podcast. And of course, also, which we'll bring up, is also did the lyrics for Grim Grinning Ghosts for Haunted Mansion. So kind of see a little bit of a familiarity there amongst those things, but also, yeah, a very, very, very catchy tune.
Yeah, and a lot of people assume, again, there's some misconceptions in the Disney community, and this is not all Disney fans. I think probably most listeners of the show know that it was Exitensio and George Bruns, but a lot of people associate all iconic classic Disney park songs with the Sherman Brothers, but the Sherman Brothers also wrote music to a lot of films, and sometimes they were preoccupied with other important projects and could not commit to writing for a Disney parks attraction. And I don't think Walt wanted every theme to be written by the Sherman Brothers, as iconic and prolific as they were at writing themes. So it sometimes took another duo, and George Bruns and Exitensio were paired up on a number, as you said, of attractions to develop these themes that still are just as iconic as the tunes that have been written by the Sherman Brothers. So not everything classic Magic Kingdom is written by the Sherman Brothers, and this is just one example. Let's keep moving, Mike. So let's go
Oh,
clockwise order. We hit on the major aspects of Adventureland, and that brings us to Frontierland, which has seen many changes over the years and will continue to experience even more changes. We'll have to maybe revisit Frontierland's music once the Cars reimagining of Frontierland happens. But here we obviously have a lot of themes. And where would you like to start first, Mike? Should we start with the Frontierland background loop again, or
sure.
should we jump
Let's start.
somewhere else?
I like starting with the overall background loop of the area, that we can jump into the attractions.
All right. So, what would you like to? I know I monopolized a lot of the tail end of Adventureland. So, what would you like to? What about the
Frontierland.
Frontierland theme or background music did you want to share?
Oh, you know, it's based upon 19th century folk music, which is appropriate for the time. You're talking about the Old West here, essentially, and so they're definitely going to be taking inspiration from that time period. So everything from folk ballads, fiddles, all string instrumentals, all those different types of things are going to be playing into that particular setting. So again, it's interesting because going from Adventureland to Frontierland, there's a lot of similarities, but it definitely is a very distinct feel in comparison of these different areas. And again, just getting into that mood, that time frame. So for me, it's always interesting. It's also interesting too because of the particular attractions, right? We're going to be talking about some of the major ones, and then also one of your favorites, which I normally don't go. Actually, I think I've only done once in my entire life, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, it's again, it's very, very simple. It gets you into that mindset, that mood of that particular time in the Old West.
Yeah, and one of the songs that I try to see if there are any tunes or melodies that I can pick up with the theme. The only one I actually kind of like hum in my head sometimes is "Happy Trails." is one of the songs that's
That's a good
played.
one.
Yeah, I mean it does pick up on some of these old West tunes, and not necessarily my favorite genre of film or television, but it's I still can pick up some of the themes that are there. But you're right, it does call from that era. this is really an area that is focused mostly on attractions. Pecos Bill plays the Frontierland music loop. It doesn't have its own distinct score, and there's no major restaurants in Frontierland itself. So it's really just attractions. And I'll say that the one that we probably could hit on quickly from a music perspective, unless you have anything else to add, Mike, is Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, because it does have the same exact style of music as the Frontierland music loop, with the exception of the fact that it plays more upbeat tunes to maybe get you more into the mind frame of an exhilarating runaway mine train attraction. So it does have the songs that are included in the queue are more upbeat, and it's more like something that you would dance to in the Old West as opposed to be serenaded by or sing along to in the Old West. So that's a
Absolutely.
little difference with Thunder Mountain's queue music tempo, but it's otherwise drawing from that same era of melodies and songs.
I had notes here on a couple of songs that I picked
Please
up
do
along
jump
the way.
in.
So
Yes, yes, yes.
Home on the Range is one that that definitely picked out. And then I literally have my notes in all caps. I lost my poor meatball. So that made me laugh when I heard that come up. I'm like, oh, that's so funny.
That's a throwback.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a throwback.
very good selection of it's almost like funny listening back to some of the songs that they picked, but that's kind of representative of the era and the time. Was the songs were a little bit more campy and laid back than some of the songs that are in the even 20th century, or before, in the 18th century and before that. uh did you want me to tackle Country Bears? Was that the one you've only
Yeah.
done once?
So
Okay.
I've only done that once. I have a lot of notes here, so I can also interject in with some interesting factoids. But that is an attraction. I know that you loved it and you done it many times as a kid. I think I've
Loved
only
is a strong word. I was
okay.
I held a lot of nostalgia for it.
Fair. But for me, my family, it was never really like, again, my heart is in Tomorrowland. My heart's in the future. So for me, I think I've done that maybe once or twice ever. As many times I've been to Magic, even just Magic Kingdom specifically, I think I've only been on there once or twice. So I remember vaguely things here and there, but I know you've done it far more than I have.
Yes, I've probably done it a lot. It was really my dad's favorites, one of his favorites, especially Big Al, and I am anxiously awaiting his reaction to the updates, which I will say, as I have not been going to Walt Disney World since 1971, so it's not exactly as nostalgic for me as someone who perhaps grew up going to Magic Kingdom before Big Thunder Mountain Railroad existed, back when Frontierland really was the frontier, and Country Bear Jamboree was the highlight attraction for Frontierland, or one of the highlight attractions for Frontierland. So I don't hold the same type of nostalgia, but there is a deep Imagineering history to Country Bears. I'll have to tackle it on a podcast episode. Is on my list of attractions to get to. But I think most people who are honest about the original soundtrack would agree that it probably needed an update. It might not have been the best selection of songs to choose from. Very, very, it had a lot of humor to it, and it was never a show that took itself seriously. It was always meant to be this very humorous, misfit group of bears who come together to put on a show. And the music that they pick is not highbrow, not highbrow. They're not playing Mozart, right? It's definitely meant to be a different type of vibe than that.
And
But I think they saw the writing on the wall for the attraction's score to change.
I mean, they even made fun of themselves in a Goofy movie too. And in fact, I'll
Yes.
point that out because Goofy movie is celebrating its 30th can't believe it, 30th anniversary this year. So there's been a lot for it. And of course, there's the scene with Lester's Possum Park where they do the attraction that literally is country, like poking a little fun at Country Bear Jamboree. So I always appreciate Disney like making fun of themselves from time to time, and they have done it too. I'll probably bring that up once or twice more, but that was something that I always found very hubris, because it was like very clearly Country Bear Jamboree that they're having some fun with.
Yeah, they definitely are making fun of themselves. And people forget that there was also a Country Bear movie that was made in the early 2000s that was based on the attraction, not pulling directly from all the characters. But I'm not going to, harp too much on the classic attraction, because we really want to focus on the present. And I have now seen Country Bear Musical Jamboree, the updated version, 3 times since it appeared in the summer. Welcome back to Imagination Central. If you haven't done so already, be sure to create a free Imagination Skyway account over at patreon.com/Imagination Skyway. This is your one-stop shop for Imagination Skyway content, podcast episodes, video reviews, chat groups, and lots more surprises. So be sure to create a free account there, or consider signing up for one of our paid subscription options for even more fun. You can even try it out free for 7 days. If you already have an account and are listening on the Patreon app, be sure to leave your thoughts about today's discussion directly on this episode. Remember, you can also engage with the show on social media by searching for Imagination Skyway on your favorite app, or heading to imaginationskyway.com. And if this episode has you longing for a trip to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or any other Disney destination, be sure to reach out to our travel partners and sponsors over at KMV Travel. Not only are their services complimentary to you, but also listeners of Imagination Skyway, yes, that's you, can get rewarded for booking a trip to Disney. All you have to do is head to kmvtravel.com/Skyway and fill out the form to get started. And make sure that you select Imagination Skyway under the How Did You Hear About Us question to be eligible for a special gift from the team at KMV Travel and Imagination Skyway. As you disembark, please remember to remain fully seated until the podcast comes to a complete stop. Then gather your belongings and watch your head and step as you exit. Thank you so much for riding aboard Imagination Skyway, and remember, if we can dream it, we can do it.